Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Fazz.
And I've got really gummy sweets glued around my teeth and I couldn't get it free in time.
I was trying to be quite cinematic about my intro.
No, you're doing well. You're trying to buy me time. Okay.
You're being less cinematic right now.
Wait.
This isn't good
Oh,
podcasting.
God.
I'm watching
No,
watching Grimace.
It's alright, I got it.
If you pull a tooth out with a fruit gum,
No
one needs that.
It happened with giant buttons though, once upon a time.
Really? We have giant buttons in front of us as well.
Yeah,
We're fucking pigs. we use the podcast as a disguise.
It's an enabler.
to just eat packs of sweets.
Plow through sweets.
Well, won't it be funny if we just, it'd be nice to just tell people what we drink and what we eat. I'm currently sat here with some cider and just bags and bags of sweets. And that's what I like to do, guys. Yeah. I don't like to retro game. I like to drink and eat. That's and I like rich, so it's fine. So there we go.
Oh, third on the list.
You are most definitely third to sweets and alcohol. Listen, know your role. The reason I was trying to be quite cinematic is because we are doing an interactive week.
Which games are normally not.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you did, when we first kind of said about this idea, you were like, games are always interactive.
Yep.
I think, so the initial idea was interactive FMV games, which 3 of the games that we are doing are. You're doing 2, I'm doing 1, and they're all interactive FMV games, is what I would define them as.
Right.
And I'm going to do one that isn't an FMV game, but is an interactive game.
What?
No.
What?
You're dropping down the list, Rich. All right. Grass is next, if you need to know. I also like water, and nice walks in the sunset. Anyway, that's my blind date right there. So yeah. I didn't tell you there was a 4th game. I did say I was going to do something different, and actually I've went quite deep into an interactive game. That is, completed it this week, and got it this week, completed it, and yeah. So there we go. Are you going to stop saying? Anyway,
what?
And the whole idea is that, so you can tell that we don't practice these things before the podcast because they're shit on the podcast, so it's fine. So we've got a kind of history, if you will. You've done what I would call some of the first interactive FMV games, or you've looked at them and are going to be kind of reviewing them a little bit, which are?
Sewer Shark and Night Trap. I don't know if they are like the first ones, but they're good early home examples.
Yeah, I think that they're thereabouts. That is, and I don't remember there being many more necessarily before that, and certainly I think they've got some sort of notoriety behind them. Maybe, I don't know.
Night Trap does in particular,
cool.
For causing a bit of controversy with its racy content.
Yeah, naughty.
And now it's on a mini console as a sort of kitsch throwaway. Yeah. So how things change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one cares now because everyone's just murdering everybody all the time now. It's fine. Speaking of which, we blast through time to 2021, and I have played a Wales interactive game, and they're a company. Guess where they're from? And they
there's 50-50 chance it was either spelt with an H or it wasn't.
They're from Interactiveville. So they're from Wales, and they have done a glut, if you will, I would call it, of interactive FMV games for now, if you will. And the first one I'm going to be looking at is Bloodshore, which is a battle royale FMV interactive game.
Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. Oh, we'll get to that. Don't worry. It's fine.
Okay. Yep.
And then the other game I'll reveal later on. It's
right.
Fine. Not because it's a super secret.
An interactive game as opposed to a non-interactive game.
Of this era, yeah.
Right.
So effectively, so you're doing the retro gaming part of the podcast. Yep. I'm doing the now part of the podcast. So I'm hip, I'm down, I'm woke.
Right.
There you go. Yeah.
Do you even know what that means?
No, right. No one knows what that means.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
No one knows anymore. So let's go back to 1993-ish, I think, maybe.
I want to say 92 for the earliest one. Yeah, Night Trap was 93. Sewer Shark was 92.
Cool. Hit me.
I've got my notes out, but frankly, now I'm looking at them again. They look like the scrawlings of a psychopath. Like this is what they find in the films when they're about to convict someone, isn't it?
Not concerned.
Wow. Okay. Where the hell do I start with this?
What do you do with this?
Okay, cool. No, it's fine. It's good. I can work. My God, these games did.
We have forgotten how to podcast.
No. This is fine. Right. So Sewer Shark. Let's start with Sewer Shark. In fact, no. Let's go back one step. They are both made by the same company, right? Okay. The same people.
That's a good start.
So they've kind of got some very similar elements to them. So FMV, correct me if I'm wrong, full motion video.
Yeah. Why not? Who knows?
So when the Mega CD came out, it was an opportunity for developers, filmmakers, some combination thereof, to make these interactive experiences that, well, I mean, since the start of video games, everybody's wanted like an interactive movie, right? They've wanted to be able to sit, watch a film, and interject as needed, and it carries on and does stuff. And
Hideo Kojima loves it.
Exactly. And so FMVs were an opportunity to start to make that happen and explore what could be done. So Sewer Shark is an on-rails shooter, which I was not expecting, really, if I'm being honest. Oh. I've always kind of associated FMVs with like adventure games and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that sort of slaps you in the face is just how 90s it is. The chatter is so rad. It's I guess considering the fact that it's an on-rail shooter in the sewers, it is literally and figuratively totally tubular, dude.
So you're rad. I'm woke. This is how this works. I'm not.
You definitely don't know what that means, do you?
No.
So you should probably stop saying it.
Okay.
But the game sets you up, and I'm not entirely sure what is going on with it. Right? You basically have to possibly get from A to B through these sewers. Mm-hmm. You're guided by a small robot, and on your way, you're trying to shoot as many of the monsters that are down there as possible and not get killed. There is a plot. Again, not entirely sure what is going on, because despite the fact that they tried to make it kind of like a film, they didn't take on a lot of the kind of explaining the plot within the film kind of
the core
parts of making a film. Yeah.
There is a plot usually. Oh, I see.
So I was floundering for quite a while here until I found the manual online. And then it actually got like A, the plot, but B, how to actually play the fucking game got explained. Because the way that the little robot dude is kind of giving you directions and other characters as well later on, it's kind of randomized, but they give you a number. So 12, 3, 6, or 9. And they correspond to, straight on, right, down, or and left. Maybe not even straight on, actually, it might be up. But the way that the game interprets that is not like you are taking the sort of the next version, the next turn you can, but you have to be able to like hold down the B button and then push the direction, because the rest of the time the D-pad is going to be controlling the crosshair for you to shoot stuff. And instantly it's just it feels a bit fudgy, right?
Yeah,
like
sounds fudgy.
You can get your head around it, and like I did have some joy getting a bit further into the game. Once I played it a couple of times and was like, it started to click, right? It does click. But without the manual, I would not have worked any of that out. And I didn't for ages. And I just kept crashing, dying, and resetting, and that's that. So as you go through, you have a score counter and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of get to these gated bits, and there are kind of checkpoints as you go through. And if you are not performing above a certain level or doing well enough as far as the game is concerned, then you basically just fail.
Okay. So what? what kind of parts of plot are there to then fail at, if that makes sense?
So, you are a new pilot, drafted in, or a replacement pilot is probably more accurate, to basically help clear out these sewers. The implication is that the people who are in charge, the person in charge, is somehow trying to like fiddle this situation and profit from it. You know that gag in South Park, one of those old episodes where they meet the Underpants Gnomes, where they have like Underpants profit. It kind of feels like that, right? Like, like in terms of like a fleshed out narrative, I don't really know if there's much of one there. That said, it's largely because I'm sufficiently crap at the game still that I couldn't actually complete it. And I checked on like howlongtobeat.com or whatever it's called. And I think if you play it through, I think it's only about an hour and a half long. And I wasn't able to see the end of it. Honestly, I tried, but I just wasn't good enough to actually see the end. And you never know; it might all get wrapped up in a nice, neat bow. I would
terrible sewer pilot. You
well, I would be lying if I said that the snippets of plot that I've got intrigue me. Like if you were playing Dark Souls, you get snippets of plot, and then the fun is weaving it all together. This is not Dark Souls, right? You get snippets of plot because it's explained poorly. It's there are a couple of characters in it.
This is Dark Place, not Dark Souls.
Yeah, and they pull you through it as best they can, but it is fun. It's engaging. There is, dare I say it, more game there than I was expecting. As an on-rails shooter, but it's I would have it filed more as functional than anything. Like, it's a functional game with some unusual trappings of the FMV around it, right? So, like, mechanically, it's not more complicated than you need to press an extra button than you think you do to turn. So the pilot that you are with, or your co-pilot rather, will just berate you if you're doing badly, and will praise you if you're doing better. And so you do have a kind of
that's kind of
you
it.
do have a kind of gauge as you go through of how badly you're doing. And I did have that moment of like, wait, this is 1992, and it's a game that's able to do stuff like that. So, like, from a technical point of view, rather, the fact they can do that and like randomize the directions you need to take and stuff like that, and they are fully voiced, is genuinely impressive. So, credit where credit's due. I don't know if there's much meat on the bones for it, though. But I was suitably impressed.
Okay,
I think it is fair to say. The video is
positive.
Is terrible to look at by today's standards. Of course it is. It was basically running on a Mega Drive. But, it does the job. I'm not going to give it a score yet, though, because I'm going to move on to Night Trap. Because Night Trap, is basically a film happening, and you are changing cameras around it, trapping various beings that are skulking around this house, trying to protect. You are trying to protect the teenagers that are hanging out at this house for some reason, and it's like that classic sort of slasher setup.
Teenagers.
That it makes zero sense. Like, none of it makes sense. So you are some kind of agent, I guess, for the Sega Control Attack Team, which unfortunately is abbreviated as SCAT.
Scatman, you're the Scatman.
I am the Scatman. And yeah, the idea is it almost kind of like a Five Nights at Freddy's thing, where you change the camera view and stuff like that, to the extent that when I was playing through it, I was waiting for a jump scare. Yeah, that never came. But I could see why it caused a stink at the time, because there are teenagers in sports bras. There are masked men skulking around a house, and I don't mean like in an intimidating way, in a kind of Power Rangers campy skulking kind of way. It's like Carry On slasher, right?
Putting men like
basically
twanging bras, like
it's a really bizarre setup. The plot makes very little sense, but compared to Sewer Shark, there is actually something that looks like a plot there. So credit where credit's due. And again, from a technical point of view, where you are changing between all of these different cameras and the plot is still going, and you can interrupt these scenes and cut back and change to see different perspectives. So like at one point, early on, there's a couple that are having a conversation in the living room, and then they go outside onto the driveway to meet the teenagers when they turn up. You can either see what the couple are saying inside, or you can see what the teenagers are saying outside, and then they'll intersect and all that kind of stuff. So for replay value, it's great. And as you kind of go through, you get like this little ticker of the bad guys that have gone past these traps that you're meant to be triggering. So you know how bad you fucked up straight off the bat. So instantly you're like, okay, so I know within the first 30 seconds, before the plot's even started, I need to be trapping like 10 people, and I've only found 2. So where the hell are they?
Yeah.
And so that gives you that reason to go back through. And then through that, you pick up different bits of the plot and start to be able to piece it together. So like structurally, as an FMV game, it makes way more sense than Sewer Shark does. It like just straight off the bat. And the controls are a bit easier to get your head around. But I still needed the manual to work it out. Not least because one of the conceits is that they have like a control system that you're hacked into, and for all these cameras...
As the
Scatman around the house. But in the house, they can change the colour code to lock you out, and you have to change your system to match it. So if you don't catch the snippet of conversation where they very explicitly tell you what colour it's going to be, you will suddenly not be able to keep up. So that's how it kind of gates progress, and you have to.
I'm straight up getting the guide out for that.
Well, I played it through a couple of times, and I started writing down at the bottom here, and this is partly why my notes look so insane. I started writing timings and color codes because I thought I was keeping up. I think it does what Sewer Shark does, and I think they mix them up sometimes. I think they're slightly random. Either that or I'm really crap at this. And I say that because I think this might be the quickest game over I've ever had in a game ever.
Brilliant.
2 minutes. Genuinely. So like at the start of the game, like with Sewer Shark, it's more like a film, right? And your character has walked through this hallway and characters speak at them, and you kind of start to work out what's going on from that as the new guy. Night Trap, you get a briefing. You're actually in the van, you have someone, your scat leader, like telling you...
So the kids.
Telling you what's going on. not even dignifying that one.
That was rad, you know it.
Yeah. And the thing that got me about this is that he basically says, like, you need to... This is how you change between the cameras. You need to get a move on. And then he says, like, you need to go now. Why are you still here? You should go. I'm terminating the connection. And like the thing you use to hack into the system is a Mega Drive controller, and he literally pulls the cable out of the controller. The problem is, I think they told him they'd get it in the edit, and there would be a bigger gap between the lines. So basically, gives you the briefing and says, you need to change the cameras. You need to get a move on. You need to go now. Why are you still here? I'm terminating the connect. And I was just sitting there watching. I thought it was the intro still.
Wait a minute, this feels a lot like Paratopic.
And he just cut the connection and was like, and I just saw the credits roll. I was like, oh, fuck you very much. Like, so yeah, like it's deliberately or otherwise, it was an effective curveball. it was Kojima-esque, you know.
Oh, I failed.
Yeah. So, and that's basically everything in a nutshell. So scores-wise, the problem I had when it came to the scores, and the reason I've ummed and ahed and left it this late, and the reason I'm going to get the spreadsheet up now, is the fact that I gave Hatoful Boyfriend 8 out of 10. Objectively, both of these games have more interactive elements than Hatoful Boyfriend.
Okay.
This is my problem.
Yeah, but we're not being objective, are we?
Well...
And you don't need to... It's not about... I mean, certainly when we thought about this pod, I personally wasn't too concerned about how interactive something is. It was more like, as in... Certainly I wanted to know where the games had come from. That is in the early 90s, and it's almost like I didn't, like what I'm trying to get get at here really is that I respect your score for Hatful Boyfriend. Don't worry about that too much. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, don't let it stop you sleeping at night, Scatman.
So what I was going to say was I gave Hatterful Boyfriend 8 out of 10, and it is a PowerPoint presentation, effectively, with really effective writing and the occasional decision to make. That said, Night Trap I'm going to give 8 out of 10 as well, because I think as a quintessential example of quote unquote early FMV, and it feels like the closest they got, at least from the ones that I've played, and I haven't played many, but it feels like the closest they got to where the aspiration met what they were actually able to achieve.
Yeah.
It feels like they might have got close to what they were setting out to do. Sewer Shark, I think, is a brave idea that is the kind of thing that wouldn't necessarily have worked until several years later. Just from a technical point of view, I think it was a bit of a swing and a miss. I appreciate what it's doing, and I did have fun with it from what I played, but it did get pretty frustrating pretty quickly.
Okay.
And when it wasn't frustrating, it got pretty dull afterwards. So I'm going to give that one 6 out of 10, and Night Trap 8.
Do you know how well reviewed these were at the time or not? Because I feel like I know nothing about them apart from maybe that they were kind of like panned a bit and also had a bit of notoriety around something. That isn't
not off the top of my head. Night Trap did get a bit of notoriety. It also got a re-release more recently. I think, which don't quote me on this.
Something.
I think you can play it on Switch.
Oh,
really? That kind of a re-release. I know Limited Run did some stuff as well. I think around it as well, and all that kind of stuff. So
that must be worth something.
It's
to somebody somewhere.
I've mentally filed it under cult classic.
Yeah.
How accurate that is, I don't know. Sewer Shark, as far as I'm aware, I don't think has had quite the same longevity.
Yeah.
Because I think as a game, it's not exactly playing to the FMV sort of medium strengths, if you like. If it was a sprite-based game or a polygon-based game, I think people would just say it was quite dull.
Yeah.
Not without reason.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, let's fast forward then about almost 30 years. Oh, you got me about the Scatman thing. That was good, though.
Thanks.
I actually enjoyed yours. I'm supportive of your decisions. Unlike some of the decisions made in Bloodshore, so, as said before, Wales Interactive seem to have a slew of interactive FMV games kicking around on Xbox. And I guess on Windows, and you must be able to download the PS5, etc. So I paid money for this on the back of that I knew I was going to do it for the podcast. I wouldn't normally pay money for interactive FMV games. I mean, my only real experience, I think, really is the X Files in like the late 90s on the PS1, which was like 2 discs because there must have been so many things in there. And I still have a really horrible memory of being... Is it soft blocked? Like, as in, like, where you get stuck in a save? What do you... Yeah. Like, so I saved it at one point, and I couldn't get out of that anymore. I was always going to die at that point, and it was like 70% into the game. And it was like, oh, right, okay, well, you know... And then I kind of had a bit of fear of them until now. So, not necessarily a genre I'm definitely interested in, but I was like, look, you know, I want to see where it's evolved to now. And it came up on offer for £6 on the Xbox store, and I thought, yeah, fuck it, let's have a go.
Yeah.
So it's definitely marketed as a game, but it's definitely a movie. Like, it's in, like you were just watching a film and occasionally having some sort of limited input into the decisions these people make. You don't, but it's so little. It's so little. That is in. So apparently, I think there's about I can't remember now. I think I made 57 decisions or something like that, and I saw 19% of the scenes. So it's like, you know, that I think I said to you before the pod, I was like, it was an hour and a half that I spent on this, and there is some replayability, I would say, in so much if you want to see more of it. The problem is that it's shit, so you don't want to see more of it. I bought this thinking it would be schlock, and it is. and I'm still disappointed. Like, and that's probably that's on me. Do you know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, when I pay £6 for something, and not that like £6 is a small amount of money or a large amount of money or things, but certainly when I say that I paid £6 for the Portal collection, and then I look at what I got for this. In fact, I think I paid less for the Portal collection. That game that, if you haven't listened to that podcast yet, 10 out of 10 that you gave it on a free play fortnightly, rightly so. And then I got this and I was like, that's a real waste of money. But I'm going to give you the summary of the story. I'm going to read verbatim from my notes here because it'll do a better job than me even thinking about it. So, Bloodshore is an interactive action movie about a televised battle royale between high-profile streamers, entertainers, and death row inmates. You control the fate of Nick, a washed-up actor who fights for life-changing cash prize. 50 contestants split into 6 groups in a reducing circle on an island. So that's the summary,
right,
of the definite movie. It's definitely a movie. It's not a game. And there's a little bit more to it than that, but it would be a spoiler to give that away if you do feel like after I absolutely shit on this game, you want to go try it. I would not recommend going and trying this one. But if you kind of got an inkling, for that kind of thing, like the movie Battle Royale, have you seen the original Battle Royale? Yeah. Oh, you seem like really indignant about that. I imagined that you had. You just didn't do anything. You didn't move. The movie is fantastic. Like, I absolutely love it. Like, but it has its fair share of like those moments where it's like, this is just so hyper real. Like, it's ridiculous, but they still kind of make it feel a bit grounded enough to believe it possibly could happen at some point. Whereas this, it never feels real. Like, and I think that the way that they've tried to make it so that it is of probably even, I'd say, of the 2020s, almost of the pandemic era of the characters. Certainly the characters you interact with most are these streamers, these high-profile entertainers, these TikTokers and things, where it's like, these are the people that are famous people nowadays, the Z-listers, and it's meant to, the idea really is more that it's like Celebrity Big Brother, that you get these Z-listers being sent in, but they don't know that actually, and they think that there is. I mean, this won't give too much of the game away because I think it's actually explained some of the plot like quite early on. That is in so the idea is that. It's a battle royale, so therefore, if you've seen battle royale or if you've seen Hunger Games, more people die, and they think that there's some sort of out from this point, but actually in this series they're like, no, you could potentially die, and they didn't know that going in. But these people, I think they've tried to be really kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for, really? Kind of up to date with it. That is in almost like, real zeitgeisty sort of thing, where it's like, these are the people that you, the audience that have bought this game / movie, definitely / movie, like, as in, these are the people that you interact with most at the moment. And I'm like, but I don't, like, as a 36-year-old person, like, as in, I don't really interact with those. I don't interact with TikTok. I don't interact with that sort of generation that's just a little bit below mine. So actually, when I played this, I was a bit like, it didn't feel like my generation. I was like, who are these people?
Who are these children?
But the people that are in the actors are my age. Like, it's almost like the guy who you're meant to be, Nick, must be like 50. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, and he was, it's very clear that he's like the child actor, sort of, that you think of from, like, I don't know, Stand By Me and stuff, that everyone's kind of like, the child actor that got, famous young, and then, like, Quarry, flicking my fingers at you.
You are.
The famous Quarry person. Anyway, the one that died recently.
Oh.
So, yeah, not in this game. So, yeah, I don't know, it just didn't stick at all in terms of these people. They were like almost like a 2020s sort of like who's who of a Scream, sort of like, like, as in, these are the people that would die here, and here, and these are the people that you'd want to kill, and it almost sends you down a road sometimes. Like, some of the conversations, like, you'll start having a conversation with somebody, and then it'll give you a choice, and it almost bottlenecks you into the choice that feels like you're finishing the sentence off. Like, as in, you would have to really kind of go, oh, that's a bit of sort of weird thing to say at this point. So it feels like they're trying to drive you down a certain decision tree. I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly when I was playing it, subjectively, I was like, all right, okay, I feel like I have to say this now because that's what a normal human would finish this sentence. Like, if you said the other thing, you'd sound like a fucking nutter. Like, as in, like, so, yeah, it's weird. Possibly some of the... This is probably being... Is it being harsh? I don't know. Some of the worst acting and scripting I've seen in a movie, I think. Like, as in, I don't think that they have taken much time over this at all. Production values, the way it looks pretty good. That is in, you know, it looks like a Hollywood film. It just falls down on the idea that I guess you're always going to get a bit of a stilted sort of situation where it's like people are saying, "Oh no, look over there to the left," and then it's like, and then it'll have a little wait, like, and then you'll get the next scene like after you've pressed your decision. I actually think, again, from a production point of view, it does a pretty good job of like blending that. Like, you don't notice it very much. It's quite quick, and if you click a decision, it's quite quick to then move to the next scene, which is a positive for it.
So I think with Sewer Shark, it kind of had a similar problem where it was meant to feel like one seamless experience, but then you could sort of see and hear the loading bits. I think, weirdly, when I was trying to grapple with the idea of Night Trap playing more to the medium strengths, that's why it worked, because you were managing the cuts yourself, and you were choosing when you would cut between things, because otherwise the scene would play out in a location. It was almost like theatre.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the difference.
Which is, like you say, it's funny because the actual production part of it seems to work really well.
Yeah.
But it's like the actors are waiting for it to happen, the way that they're speaking.
Have you pressed it yet?
Yeah. It's just almost like, oh no, bomb, wink. And it's just like, and you're like, you didn't have to do that. Like, the guys are sorted out for you. It's actually pretty quick. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to indicate that you're playing a game, again in inverted commas, apart from if you pause, there's it's called a tracker.
Right.
And it tracks, I guess, really sort of a score, if you will, of your interactions with the environment, with people and things. So the 5 things that it tracks is your team morale. So you're kind of sticking a bit of a team during the film, movie. And there's an audience opinion, which is kind of a cool idea because whilst you've got this movie going on, there is, it cuts kind of almost Black Mirror-esque to people watching this battle royale happening. And it's meant to sort of, again, kind of reflect a bit of a mirror on you, sort of like, oh, you're watching this battle royale happen, and what kind of person are you? And there's like homeless people watching it, and, you know, like people that sort of like, I guess, look like nerds who are playing World of Warcraft in like a internet cafe watching it and stuff, and being really critical of the people they're seeing. Oh, that Nick is such a dick and stuff like that. It's just like, you know, so that there is the idea that you, I think, are meant to make the audience like you. I'll get to that point in a minute.
Right.
And then there's a romance factor. So there are people that you can have a romantic relationship with during this very short period of time on this battle royale. Yeah, exactly. Jeez. But apparently this is meant to happen. Huh. And they really do crowbar that in. And I'd say
you'd have to, wouldn't you?
But like, it almost feels like they kind of do it from a point of view where it's like, you can kiss this man or you can kiss this woman. And it's almost like it's like they're trying to make it like, oh, look at the choices you could make. And it's like, it just didn't need to exist as a choice. That is, it just doesn't feel like they've just really spooned that in to be like, oh, you can decide your sexuality during this really intense 90 minutes of being in a battle royale, you know, terrible acting. And then insight and strength. I don't know. I think insight is meant to be how well you're following clues, and strength, I guess, is the strength of your party.
Emotional strength?
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't explain it very well. So yeah, it just, to sort of bring all that together really then, it never really explains how well you should be doing at that, or what you should be doing. Should you be aiming to have 100% audience opinion positivity? Should you be aiming to have 100% romance? Like, should you be aiming to have them all maxed out? Or it doesn't ever say this is good for you or this is bad for you. That is in, there's no real stat line to it. It just kind of gives you these generic figures that don't mean anything to you.
Yeah.
So and that's the game part of it. It's really weird. the decisions that you make are very much like, you can go left road, you can go right road, you can shoot this person, you can choose not to shoot this person, you can run or you can do nothing. There are fail states in the game, which is, I guess a brave move in a way, but they never stick. So I failed twice, and it was like it just went, oh, rewind. And then it's just and I'm like, oh, as in maybe send me back to the start, or at least make me start my save again or something like that. It was like, no, we're just here's two decisions. You made the wrong one, right? We're just going to send you back to make the other decision. Well, that's not a choice, then, is it? It's just you kind of putting something into almost extending out the very paltry 90 minutes that you're giving me here. And if you quit out the game as well, when you come back in, I'd expect this of a game in the early 90s, but if a game is from 2021, I'd expect it to put you back in a very similar moment. It puts you back like 10 minutes of the movie. And I'm like, and inadvertently as well, you could make another choice from there. So I quit out because I was like, oh, gonna go to bed or whatever and stuff. And I came back and I was like, oh, I'm 10 minutes back, and actually I can make a different decision that I made last time, which I'd expect on another playthrough, but not the same playthrough I was already on. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Isn't it just goes back on the decision tree, and it's like, well, actually, you can just very easily manipulate what you're meant to do or not meant to do. So, positives, like I said, the production value is really good, and the music and sound effects are pretty good too. That is I genuinely...
Music, shit.
No, sorry. We can go back. It's okay. Don't worry. This is our podcast. We can do what we want. So, but negatives, like I said, just very short. I don't mind the plot almost. But it's very formulaic now. To sort of take a battle royale situation, throw a load of 2020s streamers into sort of, into battle and, enjoy watching them die is like, a bit like, I don't know. It's fine, but yeah, it just landed so clunkily. If they'd have acted it well, scripted it well, put better decisions in there, made it kind of like so that the tracker system actually really mattered in some form, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, now we're talking. Now I feel happy to have paid you money. But now I will not, and I don't want to make people feel a certain way and stuff, but I won't go back to another Wales interactive game now because I feel like they might all have the same thing going on, where it's just like, actually, there's not a lot going on.
No, that's fair enough.
So yeah, 3 out of 10. Not the absolute worst game that I've ever played, but certainly, not a recommendation from my side of the table. Tell me about the music.
So the thing that I forgot, and there's a point that I have hurriedly Googled while you were talking as well, but the point about music I forgot. Night Trap has an original song. That plays during the credits.
Night Trap,
not a million miles off. It's not quite as you were sort of doing the Chaz and Dave version, but yeah, not a million miles away.
Listeners around the world, Chaz and Dave, check them out. Cockney geezers.
It was one of those things that I got to the end, quote unquote, end credits after a fail state of one of several, it was playing. I was like, you know what? Again, fair play for like giving it a go. And you talking about the acting and stuff like that, like the acting in Night Trap is objectively terrible, right? It's not great, but on the flip side, it is great in that kind of classic, like late 80s, early 90s cheesy, you are watching it because it's so bad it's good kind of territory. It definitely plays into that. The other point that I do kind of need to address, because you said about like it having a bit of notoriety and stuff, it was lumped in along with Mortal Kombat in a Senate hearing.
Oh, really?
The one that led to the establishment of North America's Video Games Ratings Board.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people apparently cited it as promoting gratuitous violence and sexual aggression towards women, according to the Wikipedia page.
Did you sense that when you were playing it?
Well, without wishing to go into sort of spoiler territory, were you making the same plot nowadays, it would be a damn sight harder to watch.
Okay.
The bits I saw, and full disclosure, I didn't fully complete it because I was bad at it. But
well, we know because you failed on
the yeah, failed before it even began.
failed the controller bit.
The first point to mention is that you are there to protect these women.
Mm-hmm.
The second point is that the baddies, when they do catch anybody, when they do some of the stuff they do, it really reminded me of that kind of Power Rangers level of like intimidation and violence. That said, I could see how in 1993, as an interactive experience, if someone saw that, they might go, "Oh, what is this?"
Yeah.
But I think fast forward by the end of the decade, it's so like
by the time Scream's out, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And it's tame. I think it's quite tame, at least by today's standards. I would argue, and there probably were many people that argued the same, that it was reasonably tame by 1993 standards. But yeah, and it did get a load of re-releases, including notably on the Vita at one point. So yeah, very much a cult classic.
Cool. So I was alluding to that I played another game, if you will. Now, this isn't an interactive FMV game, but it is an interactive decision game. And have you heard of Supermassive Games?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you played Until Dawn?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I haven't. Shock. That is in. So, was Until Dawn good?
I enjoyed it in that I'm glad I played it. I played it once and never felt the need to play it again because it scared the absolute living shit out of me.
Yeah.
And I, at one point, was playing through it with, there was about 4 of us in the room and it freaked all of us out, which is ridiculous because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But there it is, yeah.
It's getting a remaster, you know.
Yeah.
Which is so, like, weird because it's only like, was it like 9 years? Well, 9 years old, but then still, it's only 9 years old, I think, or something like that. So it's very strange. But anyway, so I played a Supermassive game. I played The Quarry.
Right.
Have you played any of that at all? No.
Because Until Dawn scared the shit out of me.
So don't worry. You could probably play The Quarry and not be as scared, I would say. I've not played Until Dawn, but my understanding is that this is a little bit less scary, a little bit more that teenage horror that I Know What You Did Last Summer. But even then, not really. Like, even then, it's like you said before, the Night Trap, you expected those jump scares to come, and I expected them to come in this, and there's like one, which there's not really that many. So The Quarry, it was weird because I was looking for something else. I was looking for another interactive FMV game, really, to play for this because I thought Bloodshore was shit. And I thought, oh, well, actually, I want to play something that's a bit more like, you know, I want to be able to give you something back as the co-host of the podcast. You know, I know you're doing 2 games. And then I was like, oh, there's these games by Supermassive games that actually are, you know, the exact same thing, but they're actually a game. That is in, you know, there's still quite limited interactivity, I would say, in so much that there are quick time events that you have to do, which are very easy, I would say. There's no real challenge in the quick time events. You have to move your analog stick to do something either left, right, or up or down, like jump over a branch, or you might trip over, so you press up. And then the other part of the quick time event is usually just tapping A as quick as possible, which I think that the people that made this game don't realise how much we played International Track and Field. I'm like, oh no, I can do this easy. Thank you very much. So yeah, The Quarry then is
about a quarry.
Yeah, it is about a quarry.
Is it?
It is. It's set in a quarry. And also the quarry, because the word quarry means like something that's chased, isn't it? That as well. Is that, so,
quarry.
It's a double. Entendre, innuendo. I don't know, whatever that means. Anyway, double meaning thing. Right. And you don't come to this podcast for us knowing our English now. And yeah, so you control over the period of, effectively, it's kind of over one night. There is a prologue of one night, 9 camp counsellors who are all sort of, I guess, late teens, early 20s maybe, and they go to Hackett's Quarry camp as counsellors, and they get stuck there, and they're not meant to get stuck there because weird stuff happens there once camp is closed on a night time after out of camp season. It becomes something other season. Yeah, I don't want to give anything away, because it's a very recent game, 2022. It's on Game Pass now, and I don't want to. This is where I don't feel bad about sort of probably posting too many spoilers for games that are maybe anything over 10, 15 years old, because I feel like you've had your fair share of time. Whereas this is it's very recent, and I don't want to do that.
I was more wincing at the whole camp counselors out of camp season.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah,
are they regular counselors?
Yeah,
or
well, they are though.
Are they something else?
They go back. That is, they go back every year.
but what do they do outside of camp
I don't know.
Season?
Well, actually, that's a good point.
Are they not just always counsellors?
They're not super fleshed out. It's kind of intimated they're sort of students / floaters,
right? But they're not full-time professional counsellors. They just happen to go to camp sometimes. That's what I was getting at.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's very Breakfast Club vibey. You kind of get your sort of you kind of get every type of sort of late teen.
All the archetypes.
Yeah, exactly. You get your sort of couple of sort of emo-y kind of kids and stuff. But they're all. I don't think there's many. There's a couple of them that you don't warm to as much, but they're all actual actors, if you will, and it's photorealistic as well. So which Supermassive have done a good job of in the past, and they do a really great job here. So for example, Ariel Winter, who is an actress from Modern Family, it looks just like her. It looks a spitting image of her, which it should do because it's her. But they just do a great job of it. So all 9 of these characters can live or die, which is refreshing in a way. There's nothing to stop all of them dying, and the only thing to help them live is you.
Your ability to tap the A button really fast.
Yeah. She did really well most of the time. So I managed to keep, you can almost, if you want to, you can aim to kill them all if you want to, if that's what you're into. You can try and sort of select the people you want to live and die. I tried to keep all 9 alive. I managed to keep 7 alive. 2 died, of which I was really annoyed because one of them was my favourite character out of all of them. And the only thing that I did wrong was actually one of the only things that you can kind of do wrong is interactively, is it wasn't a quick time event, but there are other little things where you can do a don't breathe section, for example, where which I'm going to be honest, the don't breathe ones are shit, because it's it introduces it as, there's a threat around you, so don't breathe. So what do? You hold the A button to not breathe, and then your screen kind of goes red around the outside to sort of signify there are people hunting you, and then it doesn't go red, so you let go of the A button. And I'm like, how do you fail that part? You hold the A button, and when it stops showing red around the edge of the screen, you let go of the A button. There's no jump scare parts of it where you're like, oh, I'll let go of the A button. Haha, no, we're still fucking here, mate. It's just all quite generic. Whereas the bit that kind of I fail was an actual shooting bit, one of the only parts where you have a gun and it's aim the gun at the enemy and shoot the enemy. And apparently I must have missed, been too late, and got mauled to death. And I was like, that was my favourite character. I'm like, can I do something about that? Which I'll come back to in a minute, because you can, whether that's positive or negative for you. But yeah, so I felt pretty happy about what I'd done, because when I looked up the game afterwards, because I was like, right, so how many scenarios are there? There are 186 possible scenarios that you can go through option-wise, and it kind of every so often flashes up in the game, it's a path chosen, and it's like, all right, okay, what did I just say or do there that felt very, it felt quite nothing-y what I sort of said, or what I just did. But I must have said quite a lot of right things, or done quite a lot of right things without knowing, and kept most of them alive.
Yeah.
I think it seems very easily to kill off once I've read about it afterwards. I was like, oh, that's the juncture where they die. And I think that unless you do that with this game and research what you possibly can or can't do, I don't think you'd be as impressed as you would be just playing through it once. I think the idea is that you're meant to come back and play again, but there is something that detracts from or stops you from doing that, which is the pacing of the game. It's extremely slow in its development in general, but also some chapters are very slow as well. Like, some of them are less interactive than you would want.
Right.
Just like you're watching a movie, basically. Some of them are like almost like Metal Gear Solid 4, where you're like, oh man, this is like 45 minutes. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And whilst they're interesting within themselves, that is in, like you're just not interacting with the game. And even the ones that you are interacting with the game, sometimes it seems really slow. And it's like, whilst I was quite derogatory of Bloodshore, you could tell they'd done a good job of those intersections, like I spoke about before, where actually you make a decision and the game itself or the movie itself makes a decision very quickly and moves on to the next scene very quickly. This, you can see it working away in the background. And it's almost like you've spoken about before, where it's like, like I remember with God of War Chains of Olympus, where I was like, oh, I have to watch this FMV again. And you were like, oh, it's a loading scene. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. This as well, you can kind of like, it'll be like a panning shot of a lovely sort of like vista with like your protagonist in the foreground. They've just finished a conversation and they're about to start another conversation, but it's just taking ages to happen. And you're kind of thinking, is this meant to be setting the scene and it's meant to be a pregnant pause? Or is this just a really long pause that you're bored of? No, it is definitely the latter. Like, as in, they try and make out that it's like, oh, aren't we all thinking about things and stuff? And I'm like, no one's thinking here. The game's thinking. Like, as in, so yeah, they were quite notable. And I think this game, I've played it through this week in 8 hours, and it could have been 6 hours. And I think they kind of feared that. I think they thought, oh, maybe it shouldn't be that, because when it first came out, before it came onto Game Pass, you would have had to pay full whack for it, and I think they were a bit like, oh, who wants to pay full whack for a 6-hour game? But I think they should have been a bit braver with it. I think if they were a bit more choppier, then actually more people would have went back and played it through again and found more scenarios, because actually it was a bit shorter. There's a specific part of the game, again, I'm not trying to get into spoilers, where you go into a scrapyard and you don't know this until you read about it. You could go in there with 2 characters. You could go in there with 1 character, depending on what's happened to those 2 characters. Yeah. You could go in with, I'm going to say this as best I can, 81 character and 80% of a character. Oh, so, and even in then, there are like 5 or 6 decisions that you can make that will have loads of repercussions to it. And then that determines whether you come out with 0, 1 or 2, or 1 and 80% of a character. It's truly amazing what they've done in terms of the decision tree compared to, say, for example, Bloodshore. Like, and they need to be commended for that. They really do, because like, and I don't think they will be by as many people as they should be, because I don't think they've done a good enough job of pacing the game in the right manner.
It's interesting that you mention about looking up the decisions and stuff, though, because that's exactly what we did with Until Dawn. Like, we played it once, and then we were like, oh shit, so could we have done that differently? And then we just Googled it. Like, we didn't play it again, because that was our playthrough. We did it. Like, that was the thing. It was done. So it was just curiosity as much as anything. And yeah, so that's an interesting point about like replayability.
I mean, like, if I think about the decision tree that comes with something like Heavy Rain from 2010, and that was probably an era of where you had Quantic Dream trying to do their thing. Yeah. And I would say this is way more advanced in the amount of scenarios you could get out of it, but they should have really shortened the game up to make that something that you'd want to do. And I still kind of have a bit of an inkling down inside me where I'm like, oh, I could go back and do this and do that. But in 2024, I'm probably more likely to Google what could happen or not happen, which is kind of what's happened anyway. There's some good stuff about this that I kind of explored a little bit, but probably read up more about, really, that you can kind of do not just in the, I guess, the main playthrough once through. That is in, so there's a multiplayer mode that is more like a streaming mode where actually someone plays through and you can upvote what they do.
Huh.
So you could have 8, I think up to 8 people doing this. So you just get 8 friends. So it's almost like being sat around a movie, in different houses, if you will. Or you can be at the same house if you want to. But I'm going to choose to do this or whatever, and then it'd be like, and then people can vote on it, which is really cool.
That's an interesting idea.
Then there is a couch co-op as well, where you can just pass the controller, and you can be like, oh, you're going to be these 4 characters, you're going to be these 4 characters. You decide what you want. So there's some cool things there.
Yeah.
There is a lot to the idea that you can there's so many different clues you can find and stuff. So when I came out of the game, I was like, oh, you found this many clues, but actually there's more to find. And I was like, all right, okay. But I thought I found enough clues to actually know what was going on, but it seems like there's another 100 clues. Yeah, exactly. So I just muddled through, it seems. And the end of the game, which is, so you were sort of saying with Until Dawn, like you were saying, oh, that's the playthrough, I know what happens with those characters. Mm-hmm. In this game, it's super abrupt. It is like, it's weird, like, as in you get attached to these characters, you care about what they're doing, you care about who survived, you care about who's died, and then and then you get to the end of the game, you complete it, and it goes, oh, this person went and did this person went and did this person died, this person lived, this person died, cheers, bye. Like, and then it gives you an end credits that lasts 25 minutes, where there's a podcast playing over it, and that is what is playing over the end credits is kind of affected by what you did, but not enough for you to feel satisfied for a payoff for what actually happened in the game. That is so you're like, oh, I've got to the point where I was really having fun and attached to this, and now you've kind of just stopped it. That is it's almost like there's a moment where there's definitely a moment where you complete the game. Like, as in, I've for good or bad, whatever happened to these last sort of few characters. Yeah. That is in, like, you make a decision, and then at that point, it's like, oh, that's the end of the game. Cheers. Don't worry about any repercussions for the characters. Like, there's been loads of like death and stuff happened in this certain area. Like, as in, people will be sniffing around what's happening. Like, it just doesn't stick the landing like it should do, which is really weird because, I feel like they've put their heart and soul into 90% of the game, and then just been like, fuck it, don't worry about that. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, and even then, even with that bad ending, I was still like, oh, this is pretty good, this game. Like, as in, and it felt like the only things that were kind of like really jarring for me, that ending, the controls, it feels like a fucking tank for 2024. Like, isn't from a game 2022. Like, it controls like Resident Evil. Like, as in, when you are controlling these people, like, as in, you're like, you can just see them kind of walking against a wall and going, oh. And then like the head will look around, and you're like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, I didn't tell you to do that. And it's just like, and then the camera angle, like, they will just zoom into their shoulder, and you're like, what are you doing that for? Like, that's terrible third person. So it's
got to be bad for immersion, though.
Yeah, it is annoying. Like, so I almost enjoy the movie bits, if you will, the bits where you're not really doing anything. Even the quick time events actually are okay compared to where it's like, and they're quite few and far between, to be honest. Like, it's like, oh, walk from here to here. That's when I expect the jump scares to come, and they never really do. That is in, and they feel almost a bit pointless. That is in, I'd rather just not have them. That is in, I'd rather like just not have the walking from one place to the other sort of, pick up this clue, pick up that clue. Like, is in, because in the end, they don't seem to matter that much really anyway. It's more the conversations you have with people. Oh, this person's disappointed in you, or this person has made this decision and stuff. So,
because I mean, if it was going to be a film, they'd cut those bits out, right?
Yeah. So it feels like this game could have been 6 hours rather than 8. So, apart from that, though, that is in, I feel like this is where we were always heading with interactive games. I feel like we were getting to a point where actually we're doing a pretty good job of, for 8 hours, I enjoyed, say, 6 hours of it, and I really enjoyed it. And it was so photorealistic. It was so much better than what Bloodshore was offering me in general. So yeah, I'd give that a good. I'm going to push it to an 8 because the amount of time that I spent enjoying it was that much. It just didn't stick the landing, and there was bits of it that were like clunky. And
that's fair.
It feels like we're just. I think there is a perfect interactive game out there somewhere, and the Quarry was just shopping sort of a few levels below that. But in an idea, I think Supermassive Game will, even though I know Until Dawn sounds amazing, I think maybe the remaster might do that. I don't know, but it just feels like they are on the cusp of making the perfect interactive game. So
fingers crossed for them.
Yeah, hopefully so. But yeah, I guess that kind of gives you a bit of an idea, hopefully listeners of where we've come from, where we are
Maybe
now.
we're
Really.
going.
Yeah. So, that's what we do. Retro gaming, future gaming, all that kind of jazz. We need to change it.
Future gaming.
We need to change our tagline. I'm getting worried about our tagline as well. Because I keep on saying retro gaming podcast, but then people are like, this is a retro gaming, fuck off. And I'm like, fuck you. And they're like, fuck you. And it's a bad conversation at the end of the day. Right.
And on that note,
bye everyone.
Bye.